So, hello, John. Thank you so
Hello,
much for
Sarah.
coming on the Mortgage Mum podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So we met last year, literally a year ago. You came
Absolutely.
to ours, and you and your team built this amazing garden office that I sit in today. But I really want to find out a little bit more about your story. I think for business owners out there, it's always good for people to hear from other business owners how they came to their idea and their journey. So we'll start with that. So, how did you end up starting a garden room and annex business?
That's fantastic. So we set the company up in 2018, and
Okay.
it kind of came about fairly organically. A friend of mine lived in Wimbledon. He was looking for to basically an annex that he could rent out, so an extra bit of Airbnb
Okay.
income. He had his garden. He wanted to carve it off. He wanted to rent the house out and use that as a sort of Airbnb as an extra form of income. And he was kind of in the middle ground between using some of the off-the-shelf kind of posh shed companies, which he
Yeah.
didn't know the quality of. And then the builders and the architects were really extremely priced because everything had to be done from sort of the ground upwards. So they needed to do complete new set of foundation plans, completely design details. So he asked me to come and have a look at it. And at this point, we didn't have a garden room or an annex company. So I came along, we sat down. I said, look, let's build this for friends at mates rates. In exchange, he built me the first website, which is a little bit since then. I think he and I got a bit carried away with 80s fonts and very much not branding people. So it was an amazing success, and every neighbour basically started asking me and the team for business cards whilst we were building it. And if that isn't like a bolt of lightning saying this could
Mhm.
be something, then I don't know what was. So that literally we built two or three others in Wimbledon. I'm based in Essex, so the team absolutely enjoyed the journey up there. And it kind of went from there. And then we were lucky enough. I was meeting my then bank manager. And as we walked in, one of my neighbors happened to walk in. He happened to be his client, and he lives three doors down from me and was in the market for a garden room. And then we built the first one in Essex. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's grown quite organically. And then being from sort of not a particularly entrepreneurial background, you kind of go, well, this is a real thing. We've built five or six. The website's a little bit, what's the word? Probably cumbersome, not very sleek and sexy, and not very on brand. So I kind of then started working with another good friend of mine, Helen, and we built the brand together. So rather than, from my perspective, it was like, I just need a new website. Helen was very
Yeah.
much, no, you need a brand, and a brand is more
Okay.
than a website. So we kind of took it back, and that was a lot of fun because it wasn't an area I knew a lot about, but I knew what I wanted the brand to represent, and she
Yeah.
managed to, make that into a reality, which was great.
So what I want to know from that story is, why did your friend ask you? What were you doing beforehand that meant you were the person he reached out to and said, "Can you help me out with this?"
So I'd probably left the city. So I spent 12 years in finance, and I
Okay.
really wanted to do something on my own. So I did a multitude of things, and what I really came to ground on was something in the building trade. So the house I'm sitting in now, which we're now filming this from, was
Mhm.
two flats, which I converted back into a house.
Oh,
A
okay.
little bit myself, and a few trades guys that I kind of got to know. And that was quite a long process, but I learned tremendous amount, enough to know that I didn't want to do refurbs, because Victorian house,
Yeah.
imperial, everything now is metric. It's a real challenge to kind of make that work. And one of the last things I actually did, was, as our wedding presents, we asked people to give us kind of gifts for the garden, so plants and things like that. So we planted the garden. It looked amazing, but we had this horrible shed in there.
Oh,
So I built what was Hawksbeck version 1, which was a very, very pretty looking outbuilding, which is now very much full of kids' toys and things, and not big enough. But at that point, we didn't have children. So he kind of, in his mind, when we were having a beer, was like, well, he's done building projects.
yeah.
I love his kind of Hawksbeck, although Hawksbeck wasn't even a thing then, version 1. And he's very much an entrepreneur. He loves like distress, whatever it is, disrupting an
Yeah.
industry. He was like, come on, John, we can do this. We can do this. There's a better way to do this. So he really pushed
Amazing.
me into it as well. So he's a guy called James, and he was fabulous.
That is so interesting. So finance, city, wanted to become an entrepreneur or do something of your own,
Yeah.
and sort of organically happened from there.
Absolutely. And I think the interesting thing is, because I did something quite specific and very niche in finance, I think we tell ourselves that that's all we can do.
Mm.
And we've gone down this rabbit hole. And actually, there's so many things which you can do, which are very transferable, like just get out of bed, get to the meeting on time, be
Yeah.
wholesome, deliver a product, build it to the best of your standards, all of these things. And
Yeah.
the first few quotes that I sent out, that was one of the most overwhelming bits of feedback that I get from clients was they're so transparent. Because
Yes.
when I was in finance, it was literally line by line by line, and we still do the quotes are the same thing. So you can literally see what virtually every light bulb, plug socket, door, bit of cedar, roofing material is coming to, which
Yeah.
gives you a real transparency that what you're paying for is what you're actually getting. And should anything change along the build, like you want one less plug socket, or you want, a different set of doors, or whatever it be, you
Yeah.
know that it's not this random number that's changing at the bottom now you've signed up. It comes out and another number goes in. And that was quite powerful. And again, I probably wouldn't have structured it like that had I not had my time in finance, because most of
Yes.
our competitors just put a number at the bottom and it's X thousand pounds. So you can always leverage on your experience and pivot and go in a different direction. Just because it's finance and I'm now in construction, and most of my management team that I've now hired don't have any building relating experience. They've got
Okay.
that. So my marketing team never done building before, but I loved what the companies that they work with and the brands they work with. They had a lot of synergies with what I wanted to create. My operations manager, Ellie, she came from a project management and an operations background, not in finance, not in construction, but in
Yeah.
sort of finance as well. So I knew she'd have that discipline, and together we'd learn the things that we didn't know.
See, that's really interesting. I think it's good for people to know that because, like you say, people get stuck in boxes, especially when you're working in an employed role up in the
Yeah.
city, especially. So I'm really inspired by that. And obviously, we are 2024 now, so you're 6 years in. So,
Yes.
what are the major things you've learned along the way? Because business
Wow.
ownership carries many lessons.
Yeah,
What would you say
I
stands
just
out for you?
think you're going to solve whatever the problem is.
Okay.
100% of all the big problems you've ever had have
Hmm.
happened in the past, and you've solved them.
Hmm.
And the biggest reward you ever get is solving the problem, and when you've got a happy client and a happy product. So my view is always to say yes within
Yeah.
reason. And challenge yourself and challenge the team to grow with you, because I think if you're not doing that, you are not moving forward. You're actually, I think,
Okay.
moving backwards. So the projects that we were doing sort of 5-6 years ago, from James's right the way through to what we're doing now, are night and day different. But every year there's been a gradual evolution of that.
Yeah.
So this year we've done one of our biggest projects. So it's got 3 outbuildings. It has
Wow.
swimming pool. It has complete landscaping. Now, we wouldn't have had the skill or the confidence to do that day one, but
No.
we've built on that every year that we've come about, and now we're in a place where we do sort of complete turnkey, but complete design and build. So we can take a client from, I've got an idea of what I want. We introduce our architects, our interior designers. We get the
Yeah.
plans correct. We bring in our engineers. And then obviously, we take the build process along and build that for them, and that's just amazing. But just
Yeah.
you've got to hold your nerve, and you've got to say yes to as much as you can, I think.
Yeah, that's a real growth mindset that you're demonstrating there is just the ability to just walk forward. You don't want to walk backwards. So
You don't,
you
you
said
don't,
right at the
and also
beginning you're not an entrepreneur, but I think you might be.
I'm
I think
definitely
you
not.
might definitely be.
I also think you want to do stuff that's cool, right? I mean, the whole reason you kind
Mm.
of leave the corporate world is you want to do stuff that's really cool and interesting. And some of the stuff that we've done, I sit back and go, wow.
Yeah.
And I don't want my teams to know everything, but I want there to be enough speciality amongst them that they can all solve the problem.
Yeah.
Because I don't know everything about construction. I've tried to do various skills and I'm rubbish at some of them. Like, my plasterer can do a wall in 20 seconds, and I could never do it. But
Yeah.
it's having the confidence to bring the right people in,
Hmm.
not micromanage them, and let them deliver, whether that be a plasterer or whether that be a project manager or a bricklayer or a carpenter or whatever.
Yeah. and trusting your team. You
Yeah,
can't do it
trusting them.
without the team.
You've got to, the quicker you can let go of the reins and let other people drive that,
Mm.
some friends of mine that run businesses say you shouldn't have any stress when you're running the company because you can delegate that.
Yeah.
It sounds great in theory, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I love that. Delegate your stress as well as your tasks. I'm going to remember that and take that away
I've never
myself.
managed to do that. I take everything quite to heart.
No, but that's a good thing to work towards, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So coming back and circling back to garden rooms then,
Yes.
obviously 2018, were they as popular? Probably not, I would imagine, because COVID, I feel, was the big turning point for the garden room industry, but I'm no expert. So talk to us a little bit about what the effect of COVID had, and are we still seeing the effects of that in the garden room space?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt that there was, when we did the project for James, my view was people do loft conversions, people do an extension on the back of the house. The only real third space you've then got to go to is a basement, and that is prohibitively expensive for most normal people. But we've all got these lovely gardens, and most of our clients have lovely gardens, but they're never used to the maximum, whether it be an office pod right the way through to a gym and an office pod. Then there's definitely a lot of potential there, and the value and the diversity of what you can build has obviously changed. COVID obviously really popped because we had a huge amount of people suddenly working from home. What you have with any market that hasn't quite evolved and has massive growth is you also unfortunately have a lot of overnight people come into this business, and we've seen a lot of companies come into it, peak with COVID, and we stuck very much to growing organically. I've probably added more teams and grown more post-COVID than I could have done during COVID, because what I didn't want to do is build loads of buildings with problems, and then you've got a legacy of things you've got to put right. We always maintained quality customer service, and if that meant we did 10 less a year, 20 less a year, then so be it. And now it's reaping its rewards because most of our work is referral. I would say in the last few years you've probably seen actually the garden room industry probably slow down, which again I can only hear through architects, suppliers. We have pretty much grown 25% year on year every year since we've set up, which is fabulous.
Wow.
But we've also pivoted a little bit as well, which I think is key. So you've got to listen to what your client wants and what you're good at. And one of the things which I never wanted to build posh sheds. And again, I think that was one of the first things I said to you. I wanted everything to be as per a normal building project. And because we worked so hard to get the value right on the garden rooms, we suddenly started to look exceptional value on annexes where you have to build to the same standards as we build to for garden rooms, because someone's going to live in them. They have to be signed off by a building inspector. So in the last, and again, you always learn from your failures. So there was a client, I was on holiday, don't ask my wife about it because it wasn't the greatest holiday, where we just hadn't managed to kind of convince them that we were the right people to go with. And again, it sounds ridiculous, but a bit of a victim of our own success. So we'd had loads of case studies on our website, but the case studies aren't just annexes. They were, snooker room, yoga studio, bar, gym, office. And they were like, this is my mini house for mum and dad to live in the garden. So I was like, well, look, let's listen to what they're saying. Let's set up a whole new website. We'll take all the annexes off of that. So we've got Hawksbeck annexes. We set up a whole new brochure. And we did that. So it was August last year. I said, let's do that. We got it live in October. And I think by January, we had put in 30 planning applications for clients.
Wow.
So and do you know what? If I hadn't have lost that one project, because I wouldn't have got the other.
You wouldn't have pivoted.
But obviously at that time on that holiday, that one project was pretty sore. But now if I saw them, I'd go and give them a bottle of champagne because it forced me to do that. So I think annexes and quality garden rooms are still very much growth. I think the kind of your posh shed market, I think, we talked briefly earlier about your friend that had a bad experience. I think people are being very wary of that. So there's a race to the bottom for the rubbish. or sorry, the non-quality, might want to edit the word rubbish out, you know what I mean, the less good stuff.
Yes.
Whereas I
Yeah.
think the quality is really shining through. And I think with the cost of living and the cost of care, you know, just creeping and creeping and creeping, we can give you for 50 to 60,000 a studio, for 70,000 a one bedroom with a bathroom, a kitchen. Mum and dad can live down at the end of the garden. You know, if you
Yeah.
put that against care costs, it's looking very, very compelling. And they're there, and you know, it's lovely to have them around actually, and
Yeah.
do some babysitting, and they can, you know, do some homework with the kids, and you know,
Yeah.
it's a great balance. And if you've got that space, and it doesn't need to be big, we've built a lot which are 8x4, and that's really nice, really self-contained.
Yeah.
They have independence, but they're at the end of the garden, and a short walk away for the rest of the family. But same for people just getting on the property ladder or
Yeah.
post-wedding. They need, you know, they need a base before they can afford to move out.
That's really interesting, actually, on the annex side of things, because I think you're right. I think there is, you know, there's two problems that this can fix. One is extra space that we're all seeking, lots more people working from home, but lots more people just want that extra floor space in their house. But what I'm hearing is also we are a generation that are looking after our parents for a lot longer. Those people, you know, are financially having more difficulty. That's why the equity release market is increasing. But this offers another
Yeah.
suggestion or another solution for people to really consider for that side of things as well. So that's really interesting. So taking it back to when you and I met and I decided to have a look at the garden office, I think it's really important to remind people that you don't have to have a huge space to work with, because I
No,
made the assumption you wouldn't really be able to give me a nice office in the small garden that I had, but it has transformed the garden. And we've now got astroturf, which I know is not everybody's favourite thing. And we've polished up the rest. And it actually, I love my garden for the first time since I moved in. But it's because it looks out at this beautiful building and that frames the rest of the garden. It's just given it a completely different feel. So for those of you who don't have a lot of space, still consider this as an option, because like you say, it doesn't have to be huge to make a massive impact.
no, absolutely. I mean, we build them from sort of 9 square meters. I believe yours was 4x3, so it's 12 square meters.
Yeah.
You know, and the biggest one we've done is 90. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that's more kind of, you know, bungalow type size. But
Yeah.
you know, I think the important thing is actually is when you're buying anything in life, it's often the things you're paying for that you don't see. So
Yeah.
a lot of people can build a cedar building with bifold doors, and it's really big, but actually you're spending a lot of money on something which isn't quality, is
Yeah.
too big for purpose, and actually sometimes for what you need, it's actually quite discreet. So if it's an
Yeah.
office, a 4x3 is lovely. A 4x3, you can get a
Yes.
lovely desk in it. You've got obviously all the shelves around you, which are great. You could
Hmm.
probably put a cross trainer, a mini rowing machine,
Yeah.
something that folds down and comes out. You know, a typical example, I had a client, a new client call me last night, had seen our sign up in the area, and just said, look, I've got this garage. It's 6x4, 6x5. It was 30 square meters, and I want to convert it. We don't generally like to convert buildings. And I said, well, what do you want to use it for? He said, just an office space. I said,
Yeah.
well, keep the garage. And because converting the garage will cost more than buying a smaller garden room. It's going to be
Yeah.
insulated, it's going to be soundproofed, it's all brand new, it's going to add value to your
Mm.
house, and you haven't taken away the value of the garage that you've got.
That's
So,
very
you
true.
know, just sometimes think about what you want to use it for. Because honestly, like the first one that I built for James, it's got 3 rooms, it's got a little bedroom, it's got a bathroom, and it's got like a living area. It's 24 square meters. I think it might even be 21, and it's right in the middle of Wimbledon. Uh,
Wow.
and during Wimbledon, I think he rents it out for £1,000 a month, and I think
Wow.
sorry, £1,000 a night. I think at some points, and you know, he said, let's get as much as we can into a small space, and it was great
Yeah.
fun on the project. He was very inspired by some of the Japanese architecture where they really can get everything into a small space.
Yeah.
Because we kept it small, we kept the build cost smaller, and you know, it paid for itself in I think 18 months. It was
That's
fantastic.
amazing.
That's, you know, that's not a usual story, but you know, because not everybody wants to rent them out on Airbnb.
Yeah.
But
lots of people are trying to diversify their income. Lots of people are
yeah,
trying to think, especially in the cost of living. At the time of recording, people are still trying to adjust to that. So it's good. It's good light bulb moments potentially for people to think about things outside the box, what they can do, especially if they're in a good area where people would pay to stay there. It might be
absolutely.
something they've never thought of.
But it's, we've got a couple, again, cost of living crisis, and we built them this as literally just kind of a fun room for the kids.
Yeah,
And they phone, we quite often do viewings, so we stay in touch with a lot of our clients. So I think we showed you one up the road from where you
we
are
did. Yeah.
before you bought, and that's a great way to kind of stay in touch with the community that we've built within Hawksbeck. But I think we happened to be doing viewing. She said, "Oh, you can't do one this weekend because we're doing we've got an Airbnb let." And I was like, "Wow, how did that come about?" She said, "Well, we're really near to Stansted, and
Yeah.
we're earning loads of money because people are liking something
Brilliant.
a bit more original than staying in a travel lodge or whatever. They've got
Yeah.
they can drive up, they can park, they can walk straight in. They open the bifold doors. They're overlooking these amazing fields."
Yeah.
And they've really embraced it. You get this little welcome hamper, and she said it was just a process
Oh,
I never thought would happen. And the kids are getting
yeah.
involved. The kids are earning pocket money, cleaning it and getting it ready. And do you know what? Wow,
It's
what an
brilliant.
amazing way to teach children finance.
Yeah.
And it's rented for X. We have to clean it. That costs Y. We put a welcome basket in.
Yeah.
If we do a good job, they get a good review. And yeah, it's that was a really incredible story to hear. And again, just
Yeah.
staying in touch with the community that we've built.
It really is. And when I take myself back to when I first started speaking to you, the first thing I want to remind people of is that they need to get multiple quotes, I think, even though I would just say just use
What? No, they
Hawksbeck.
don't. That's rubbish.
No, they do, because you really stood out, because
Thank you.
actually only in doing that could I understand what I was looking for from the other quotes, because lots of people are price driven at the end of the day. And the reason I really wanted to get you on the podcast was to really educate people around the other things that they need to think about. So I asked you a million questions, but not everyone is going to do that. Not everybody is going to take the initiative to do that, or perhaps have the confidence to ask the right questions. Whereas,
Yeah.
I managed to ask quite a lot of you and find out a lot about the industry. So I figured we could try and
Let's
give
do it
people the
again.
information up front. So some of the things I asked you was, you're going to have some of these, and I'm going to call them cowboy builders because I'm allowed to. I know you might not be able to, but these builders that can build garden rooms because it's an unregulated industry, and they can build websites and they can make it all look fine, and they can charge a cheap rate so that it looks obviously very affordable. And then you've got yourself that is high quality, and some of the aspects of what you do, you make sure that you adhere to certain guidelines. So can we talk a little bit about that and what the differences are that people need to notice when they're getting these quotes through? Perhaps, like you say, just one price, not as transparent. What are the things they need to ask those people so that they can identify whether they're the right people or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is probably easier to deal with the annex market, because if someone's
Yeah.
living in it, you've got people should be doing certain things. So you should be getting planning permission, or they should
Okay.
be having a discussion with you about planning permission and permitted development rights. The
Right.
second thing is the standard it therefore needs to be built to. So it needs to be built to building regulations if someone's going to live in it.
Okay.
That's a legal requirement. And now the building regulations have kind of evolved over the last year or so, where I have to sign off as the builder. You have to have an architect or a designer sign off that it's built to building regs, and you have to have
Right.
the client confirm that it's built to building regs. So if none of that's
Ah,
happening, that should be alarm bells. And that's really, really important to get, because people are living in them. I say
yeah.
that's really important to get, even if people aren't living in them, because
Yes.
you're not building to building regs. What standard are you building to? Building regulations is set by a sort of national level,
Hmm.
and when you do a loft conversion, you do an extension, you do even basement, build a new house, everything has to be built to that standard.
Hmm.
And people aren't using these as sheds anymore. They're using them as gym spaces, offices, and kind of going back to annexes.
Yeah.
So kind of rewinding to building regs. So that's only required if it's over 30 square meters or someone's living in it. So the
Right.
challenge we've got with something like yourself, which is going to be used as an office, is what questions do you ask? Well, I would say you need to look at the company and say, what standard is it built to? Is it built to building regs? Could you get me a building regs certificate, even though there's no legal requirement? And the answer
Yeah.
should be yes. What materials are they using? So there's industry standard materials and certification. The biggest one is the BBA. So
Okay.
we build from SIPs, which are structurally insulated panels. But again, you don't have to build from that. But you want to know that the bulk of the cost that you're spending money on, which is 60% of the build, is the structure. So it's something you can't see. You want to know that that's designed by an architect and the materials going into it are BBA accredited. You also want to ask, is there any engineers working on this? Who's designed the foundation? Who's designed the loadings? Structure.
Oh. Oh no. I'll just clap. Are you ready for James or Tessa? Let's take you back
Shall I
there.
start that?
So you were talking about the build quality. You'd started talking about SIPs.
Yeah.
But you were in full flow and it was so good.
Oh,
So
God. Let me see if I can recap that. Well, how did
yeah.
you start the question? Do you want me to do the whole thing again? You can edit.
So how did I start it? Because it was organic, wasn't it? I said
I can
you were talking about the quality, like what are the things you need to know. I can't, I don't think you can get rid of everything that you just did. I think you could say, you were talking about SIPs. You said it doesn't have to be SIPs, but you need to, it's about the quality of the things before you can't see, that you can't see, and the structure.
Okay. So, one of the kind of key components is once you've made sure you've got an architect on board, or the company you're using uses architects, uses engineers. Again, you don't have to build with SIPs, but I would say the structure is very, very important. You're paying for the things you can't see. So the structure that we use is structurally insulated panels, which is
Right.
SIPs. And we buy the best that we can on the market and partner with a supplier for the last 6 years, and they're BBA accredited. But you've got to have this waterfall of checks that you do from architect to engineer to what is it built from to, warranties are very important. I don't think I've ever looked on a website that said we don't have a 10-year warranty. So scratch the surface on that. What is that warranty? Is that just with the company, or is it an insurance-backed warranty? So all of ours are insurance-backed, so that covers your deposit and that covers the structure. So I think if you get all of that, then you're in a really good place. And again, the last check I would do is go and look at them at Companies House. You don't have to be an accountant. I'm not, but you can just quickly flick through how long have they been trading, how much money have they got at the bank, how much they got. Simple things like that should give you a reassurance. And again, if you've got a quote where 3 are really cheap and 1 is really expensive, what's the difference?
Exactly.
What are you missing? What's gone wrong here? I think also is really key for what we do is we put as many examples of our work on the website as possible, and we call them case studies. So we built over 250 rooms between annexes and garden rooms. And on each of our websites, we show you what we've built. And obviously we love to have the ones where there's beautiful sunshine. The client's interior design is off the charts. But I think sometimes it's important to show just a diversity of
again.
I think that pretty much encapsulates it. So, word of mouth recommendation is fantastic. Failing that, look at how are they being designed by architects and engineers? Is their warranty insurance backed? What else can you look at? You can look at them at Companies House. You can ask to see the product, go and talk to the clients that they've built for. I mean, we've got 250 case studies. Most of our clients, unless they're living in them or they're on holiday, will allow us to do a viewing with a client. We obviously provide a bottle of wine or bottle of gin, but it's about kind of just doing your due diligence. You're handing over money to someone. You want to make sure they're reputable, and it's it's not a great world out there. And the building industry notoriously has a bad reputation because there's a lot of unscrupulous people that still operate in it, unfortunately.
It's so true. And I think actually getting the quotes, it was a really easy decision for us. So talking about Hawksbeck, the quality is in the branding, which so whoever you use, Helen, wasn't it? You said, has done a fabulous job of translating that. And sometimes I think that maybe people would assume that you're priced at one point, and actually they'll be pleasantly surprised when they actually do get the price and realize that you are representative of the market with the quality going with it. And what I loved is that we had a WhatsApp chat. And so for the whole time while you were building the project, I felt like I had your team become my team until the build was finished. And that those small touches, I think, go a long way. So yeah, you can really see how that's happened when you hear more about your story over the years and how you haven't compromised on that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we've spoke a little bit there really about red flags for people. So I think people will hopefully take notice of that. In terms of increasing the value of your home, an annex is obviously a very obvious thing that's going to do that, because it's like an extension, really. You're adding completely other area. But I think people will be surprised to know that garden rooms do add 5 to 10% onto the value of your home. And it has had that effect on our home. So, yeah, I thought it was worth mentioning that. It's not really a question for you, it's more telling you. But I do think...
I could talk around that subject, because that's something that, it's a question that we get asked. And I actually wrote a piece with Beresford's, who's a local estate agent, before COVID. And they said, as long as it's built to building regs, you got, planning permission or a certificate of lawful development, it adds the same square meterage that they will price the house at, which I think is really powerful.
That's really interesting.
And also, it's some of the cheapest square meterage that you will add. So, you've got more opportunity to add more things to it, either from the outset or eventually. So just because we build you a home gym and a shower, that could become an annex for the next people that buy it. And actually, I think a lot of people, whether you've got young children or teenagers or whatever, to have that space to work, to have that space for the kids to come and meet their friends at the end of the garden, because it's not in another room and it feels like you've got your own space where mum and dad are going to be overheard, or you can have a Zoom call without being disturbed. There's that real value add that I don't think you get with other sort of building projects. I've got clients where they're retired, they've got 4 or 5 bedroom houses, and we still build them things at the end of the garden where they want to just go and chill out, have a gin and tonic, open the bifold doors, leave their phones in the house, right the way through to, 3-bed semi-detached house, 4 people living under the same roof. They're all driving each other crazy. I know I certainly have that in my house at times. And you've got that little, kind of chill out space at the end of the garden. So it adds value to your life, and more importantly, it adds value to your property, which I think is really important. And if you can, give a warranty, give all the paperwork, because the conveyancing solicitor is going to ask that. They're going to ask for planning for it. Have you got a certificate of lawful development? Did they get a building regs certificate? What warranties and assurances it is? And if you can tick all those boxes, which we pride ourselves on being able to do, it's a no-brainer that it adds value. The last thing you want to do is build something that's rubbish, and then you have to have this whole kind of, that's not lawful, or those sort of building regs, and then it actually takes away from the value, and they'll use that as a negotiating point.
Absolutely.
The boxes up front, go with someone quality and reputable, and you're going to have great use out of it, and a great asset.
And it's a great investment. I'm actually just going to record, John, me asking you the question then, because I didn't realise you'd have the answer. So that's fantastic. So I'll just ask the question just before, and then they'll edit it together.
My 2 favourite subjects are me and my company. So
no, I love it.
I'm the worst person to sit next to at a dinner party.
I love it. I could sit next to you for hours. It's fine. So I will ask the question. So some people will not realise that it adds up to 10% of the value of your home. So that's not a question. Again, let me just think, how can I ask this? John, do garden rooms or annexes, but specifically garden rooms, add to the value of a home? Right, there you go. Right, now you can edit that in front of that answer, because that was great.
It's almost like we've worked in TV for years.
I know, so yeah, we're such professionals. So I think that is really interesting. The fact that it adds value to your life, the fact that it adds value to your home is a no-brainer. So if somebody out there is thinking about it, which presumably they are if they're listening to this, some of the quick fire questions I've had sent in by our audience. One is, are they pre-built?
So we build the structures offsite in this country. So we build them up in Scotland,
Okay.
which is fantastic. But everything else is hand finished. So the structure is built bespoke for your requirements. So no-till buildings we've ever built are the same, but we believe it's better to build the structure in factory conditions. And the reason being is because the structure or the building materials are exposed to the elements for the absolute minimum amount of time. So some of our builds can go up in as little as a day, something like yours, or 2 or 3 days. Also, the precision you get on a CNC machine versus a man hand cutting it on site are vastly different. You've also got things, when you're working with wood, which is in essence what we're doing, we find that there's a lot less moisture in any of the timbers because they're all dried in a factory condition. So they're 30% less moisture than timbers that you'd just gone and bought from a timber merchant and then started building it. What does that mean in real terms? It means your building's going to settle less, move less. It's going to be stronger. It's going to go together quicker, and it's actually 3 times stronger than brickwork, and it's 7 times stronger than a timber build because it's built off site, and the tolerances are so small when it goes together so tightly that it just forms this rigid building.
I can verify that. There are no cracks at all in this office 1 year later, and I've used it most days. So that's really interesting because
And I'm
I've
sure
had
there's been
building
some
work.
days where you've slammed a door as well.
Yeah, slam the bifold. But yeah, and I've had building work done in my house, and the cracks are so annoying when you've had build work done and you just assume there's something wrong.
Everything's drying and settling, whereas we don't get that
Yes.
because it's built in factory condition. The hand finishing, obviously, you can't plaster a room
No.
and then transport it to site. So things like that, the cedar, the detail that we've done with yours, that lovely paneling that you've got to your left. If you built that off site and then it wouldn't transport as well. So fortunately, that's still the best way to finish it.
Okay, that's a good question. So if you haven't got side access to your house, this was another question, can you still get a garden room?
Absolutely. I mean, for yours, we came through your house.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be like straight line through, so front door to back door. So
Okay.
the easiest example I give to a client is if you had a ladder on your shoulder, could you walk through and out the other side of it? In your case, yes. If you've got lots of 90-degree turns, you're going to struggle. We're doing one in London at the moment where they've got this massive bay window. And it's just been replaced, which sounds awful that we've got to take it out, but actually it comes out really easily and the materials will come through the big bay window. And
so
then
you can find other ways.
Yeah, you can. I mean, we've craned materials in when we've had to do it for, there's a couple of celebrities we work with in London where they didn't want us through the house. So we had to stop. So that was quite fun, shutting off roads and putting cranes in place.
Yeah.
For the sake of, a 10-minute walk through the house. But anyway.
Okay. And this is always the one, and this is probably my most asked question. How quickly can you get, for example, a 12 square meter? Is that what you said mine is?
Yes. Yeah.
How quickly, and I suppose, does it matter what size they are? How quickly can you get it from zero, nothing, to up and running?
So for something like yours, I think I imagine build days was about 10 to 12, including everything. And that's obviously one end of the spectrum. And then at the other end of the spectrum, where you've got, 1-bedroom annexes with bathrooms and kitchens in, again, subject to the specification, but that can be as quick as 4 to 6 weeks. So it's super quick. It's
It really
not
is.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's great. And the lovely thing is as well, I think, vast majority of the people who listen to this podcast have probably done building work, and it takes a long time, and it's in their house, and it's dusty, and then the rain changes or the weather changes, and you get that tension between contractor and client, and we don't, because we're super tidy, super efficient. There's nothing really going on in the house other than connecting with you. It was electricity and data, so you've got Wi-Fi. With annexes, we've got electricity, data, water, and waste, but most of that stuff is done in a day, and the rest is completely discreet and at the end of the garden, which is great. And if necessary, you know, and clients have got young children or pets, we can put up fencing and, you know, kind of make sure that we're completely out of the way.
You did mine in the half-term holidays, and it was very, very neat. The kids loved it because actually before the plastering happened, it was the cork board walls. I think is it cork board? Is that it was some, and they got to draw all over it. They wrote me loads of good luck messages for the business. So I know that all of that is
Wow.
the walls of the office, which is really lovely for me.
Like a time capsule on the wall.
It is, exactly. Not that I'll ever see it, but I know it's there. I took pictures. So that is really nice, wrapped around what I'm doing each day and reminding me why I'm doing it. So yeah, I loved the
Positive
process.
vibes around you.
Exactly. Well, Jon, it has been amazing to talk to you. Is there anything else that you want people to know that perhaps we've not got round to in our interview today? Anything else as a lasting note?
Look, I'm very, my phone's always on. I try to answer the phone as much as I can. If anyone has any questions, they can always speak to me. We have a great team around me, but I make an effort to talk to all our clients.
Brilliant.
I try to go to all of our sites every week. So I'm very hands-on with the business. And yeah, if anyone listening to this wants to give me a call, they'd be most welcome.
Thank you so, so much. And my last question to you is, why did you call it Hawksbeck?
So that is the name of my first dog. It was his pedigree name. And I love the dog. I love the name. And I'm so happy that name has gone on to represent, you know, quality, service, and design, which is, you know, what we stand for at Hawksbeck. So yeah,
I love that.
It's a little bit original. There was we did a mood board of
Did you?
names and things like that when I
Brilliant.
and you know, like pod green, blah blah, it just didn't really have any real meaning to me. And that just, yeah, struck a nerve. It was before I had children as well, so otherwise
You
I
can
could
go away with
naming
it after the dog.
after it, and not after one of the children. But
It's
yeah,
a fantastic name. Oh, that's brilliant. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so, so much. And for our listeners, get in touch with Hawksbeck if you are thinking about a garden room or an annex. They are fantastic. Thank you so much, Jon.
thank you. Thanks.